Welcome to our late night storytelling channel. We hope you enjoy listening to our stories. Please subscribe to our channel to receive our latest videos. Thank you all for listening. The Quiet Hours. I was 27 when it happened. A wife, a mother, the kind of woman people looked at in the grocery store and smiled at, assuming my life was built of bedtime stories, scraped knees, and Sunday dinners with homemade pies. And maybe it was. Or maybe I was just very good at pretending. My name is Claire. I live in a small, sleepy town in upstate New York. The kind of place where you greet your neighbors by name, where everyone knows what kind of coffee you drink, and where secrets don't last long unless you bury them deep enough. Daniel, my husband, was a kind man. He worked long hours managing the family hardware store his father left him, and by the time he came home at night, his shoulders would sag and his words would be soft with exhaustion. We'd married young, not because of necessity, but because it felt like the thing you did in towns like ours. Love wasn't a wildfire here. It was a steady candle, flickering but constant. Or at least, that's what I thought. I had never intended to be unfaithful. I never imagined I'd be the woman who lies awake at night, her heart hammering against her ribs, thinking of another man's touch, another man's mouth, the rough scrape of his stubble against her skin. But then came Ethan. He arrived one July afternoon when the air was thick and heavy, the kind of day when sweat clung to the back of your neck and the sound of cicadas buzzed relentlessly in the trees. Our back fence had been falling apart for months, and Daniel had finally hired someone from out of town to repair it. I saw him before he saw me, standing in the backyard, hammer in hand, his shirt clinging to his back, his skin bronzed from the sun. His hair was dark, longer than what was considered decent in our town, curling slightly at the ends. His jaw was sharp, a shadow of stubble darkening his cheeks, and his eyes. God, his eyes! They were stormy gray, the kind of color you saw right before the sky split open with thunder. I told myself it was nothing, a moment, a flicker of curiosity. But it wasn't. It started with a glance, then a smile, a casual comment about the heat, and it grew from there. I don't know when exactly the shift happened, when I stopped being Daniel's wife and became a woman aware of her own hunger again. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me like that, like I was more than a mother, more than a wife, more than a routine. I hadn't realized how much I missed being wanted. Every afternoon, while my son napped and the world slowed into the quiet heat of late summer, I'd find reasons to be near the backyard. I'd hang laundry I didn't need to wash. I'd water plants that were already drenched. And Ethan would be there, the muscles in his arms flexing with every swing of his hammer, sweat trailing down his throat. We spoke about nothing: weather, the stubbornness of old wood, how the sun baked the ground dry. But in those silences, there was something else, a pulse, a promise. I found myself watching the way his jeans hung low on his hips, how the veins in his hands moved as he worked, how his lips would part slightly when he concentrated. It felt reckless, dangerous, exhilarating. And then one day, it wasn't just glances anymore. I still don't know what came over me that afternoon. Maybe it was the way the sun caught in his hair. Maybe it was the loneliness that had settled into my bones, like a second skin. Maybe it was just the inevitability of two people, both hungry for something neither of us could name. I was wearing a pale yellow sundress, thin from years of washes, the fabric clinging to my hips in the humid air. I hadn't worn it in months, maybe longer. It made me feel younger, reckless. I pretended not to notice the way his gaze lingered on the slope of my collarbone, the curve of my bare shoulders. But I did. I noticed everything. He was kneeling near the fence post, a bead of sweat trailing down the side of his face. His shirt was discarded on the grass, and his chest gleamed in the sunlight. Skin tanned, muscles lean and hard from labor. "Would you like some lemonade?" I asked, my voice soft, betraying none of the frantic pulse in my throat. He looked up, squinting against the sun. "That'd be great," he said, and the rasp in his voice made something twist low in my stomach. I walked inside, my hands trembling as I poured 2 glasses, adding ice, slicing a wedge of lemon as if it mattered. I watched my reflection in the kitchen window, hair slightly damp from the heat, cheeks flushed. I looked alive. I looked dangerous. When I brought the glass to him, his fingers brushed mine. A simple thing, barely a touch, but it might as well have been a spark. Neither of us spoke. The world around us felt suspended, the hum of cicadas, the heat pressing against our skin, the distant laughter of children somewhere down the street. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was me, maybe it was him. But in a blink, we were too close. I could smell him, sweat, sun, something clean like cedar. His hand brushed my waist, tentative, then firmer when I didn't pull away. My breath caught. His lips hovered near mine, not quite touching, and for a moment, I felt the world teeter. I thought of Daniel, of my little boy asleep inside, of the life I'd built with careful, steady hands. And then Ethan kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't polite. It was raw, a collision of mouths and breath, teeth grazing lips, fingers clutching skin like we'd both been starved for too long. I tasted sweat and lemon and something dangerous. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine, waiting for me to slap him, to run. But I didn't. I kissed him again. I felt the heat of his palm against my lower back, pulling me closer. The brush of his stubble against the sensitive skin of my neck. The way his hand slid down, fingers splaying against the curve of my hip, possessive. We shouldn't have. I knew it even then. But desire is a traitor, and loneliness is a ruthless accomplice. "Not here," I whispered, my voice unsteady. I led him through the side gate, away from the open yard, to the shadowed side of the house where no one could see. We pressed against the weathered wood siding, the air thick with the scent of summer and something electric between us. His hands were rough, calloused, and the scrape of them against my bare skin made me shiver. My dress slipped from my shoulders, pooling at my waist, and his mouth was everywhere. My throat, my collarbone, the hollow between my breasts. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't careful, it was desperate, hungry, every touch a silent plea, every kiss a betrayal I was too far gone to stop. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. My skin burned where he touched me, his name a whisper on my lips I didn't mean to say. And when it was over, when we stood there, breathless and trembling, our bodies marked with sweat and fingerprints, I felt something sharp lodge itself inside me. It wasn't regret. Not yet. It was fear, because I knew it wouldn't be the last time. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time slip in a moment of weakness. I promised I'd forget it, bury it under the quiet rhythm of married life. But some things aren't meant to be buried. That night, lying beside Daniel in the too familiar warmth of our bed, I felt Ethan's touch ghosting across my skin. Every time Daniel's hand brushed mine, guilt flared hot in my chest. And yet, it wasn't guilt alone. It was longing. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep as Daniel's steady breathing filled the room. I tried to recall the softness of his lips, the familiar scent of him, the way we used to be before time and routine dulled the edges. But all I saw was Ethan, the hunger in his eyes, the way my name sounded on his lips. And the terrifying part was, it wasn't just about the heat, the reckless urgency. It was about how, for the first time in years, I felt seen. The days that followed blurred into one another. I avoided Ethan as best I could. No lingering glances, no casual greetings. I wore high-necked blouses and kept my distance. I busied myself with errands, with meals, with caring for our little boy, whose innocence felt like a blade in my heart. But desire is a patient predator. It waits, and it doesn't need much to unravel you. The second time it happened, it was raining. A heavy southern storm, thick sheets of water slapping against the windows, the world outside reduced to a blur of gray and green. Daniel was out of town. A business trip 2 hours north. The house was silent, but for the sound of the rain and the low hum of the television in the living room where my son napped, curled up with his favorite blanket. I should have stayed inside. I should have let it pass. But something in me, maybe loneliness, maybe madness, drove me to the porch where I stood watching the downpour, the air thick and electric. That's when I saw him. He was moving fast, water plastering his hair to his face, his shirt clinging to his skin. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself to go back inside. But then our eyes met, and everything inside me broke loose. I stepped out into the rain. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. The space between us evaporated. His hands gripped my face, cold and wet, and his mouth found mine like a man drowning. The rain fell around us, drenching us both, but neither of us cared. It wasn't slow this time. It wasn't tender. It was frantic. My back hit the wall of the porch. His hands slid beneath the hem of my dress, fingers rough and demanding, leaving trails of fire along my thighs. I gasped as his mouth found the hollow of my neck, biting, marking. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered against my skin. But neither of us stopped. I clung to him like a lifeline, my fingers tangling in his wet hair as he lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist. The world vanished. The storm, the house, the thin walls of propriety I'd built around myself, all gone. I don't know how long we stayed like that, bodies tangled, rain mingling with sweat, the sharp, breathless sounds of our want filling the air. But when it was over, when we finally pulled apart, trembling and half mad with what we'd done, the shame hit harder than before. Because this time, I knew I'd never stop. After the rain, the world felt sharper, more alive. The scent of wet earth, the way the water clung to the leaves, the trembling in my legs as I watched him walk away without a word, leaving me there, heart pounding, mouth bruised. I showered in silence, scrubbed myself raw, as though I could wash away the imprint of his hands, the taste of him on my tongue. But no amount of hot water could cleanse what had rooted itself inside me. That night, when Daniel called from his hotel room, his voice warm and easy, my throat tightened. "I miss you," he said, and I heard the truth in it. He loved me. He had always loved me. And I hated myself for the ache that bloomed in my chest at the sound of Ethan's name echoing in my thoughts instead. The days after blurred. A dangerous sort of hunger crept into every moment. Every knock at the door made my pulse race. Every casual glance across the yard held 1,000 unsaid things. I kept my distance, or tried to. But fate, or cruelty, has a way of conspiring. It was a Sunday morning when it happened again. The church bells had just finished ringing, and Daniel was helping my father-in-law fix the old fence at the back of the property. The house was quiet. I was in the kitchen, slicing peaches for a pie I didn't care about. The sweet, sticky juice sliding over my fingers. And then, behind me, a shadow. I didn't have to turn to know it was him. I felt him before I saw him. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. His voice was low, rough. I couldn't stop thinking about you. And God help me, neither could I. I dropped the knife, the peach falling to the counter, and when I turned, he was already there. The kitchen was too bright, too open. At any moment, someone could have walked in. That made it worse, or better. He pressed me back against the counter, the cold marble biting into my skin as his mouth covered mine. My hands gripped the front of his shirt, pulling him closer, the scent of sweat and sun-drenched skin filling my senses. "You drive me crazy," he growled against my throat. And then we were moving to the small mudroom off the kitchen. Door barely shut, clothes tugged aside, mouths devouring, hands desperate. It was reckless. It was wrong. It was the most alive I'd felt in years. The risk made it electric. Every sound outside, every creak of a floorboard made my breath hitch. I clung to him, teeth catching his bottom lip, nails scraping down his back as he lifted me, my legs wrapping around him. The rough, hurried way he took me made my vision blur, and I wanted more. When it was over, we stayed like that for a moment, chests heaving, skin flushed. He traced a finger down the side of my face, his expression unreadable. "This is dangerous," he murmured. I nodded. "I know." But neither of us promised to stop. That evening, the air in the house felt heavy, too quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder than usual. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hair still damp from a hurried shower, my heart pounding in my ears. Daniel was downstairs, helping our little boy with his toys. His laugh, the deep, warm sound I used to adore, drifted up the stairs, and it made my chest ache. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the flush still lingering on my cheeks, at the faint mark at the base of my throat where Ethan's mouth had claimed me. I touched it, half in shame, half in longing. There was a knock at the bedroom door. I jumped, my stomach twisting. It was Daniel. He stepped inside, a smile on his face, and for a terrible moment, I thought he knew. "Hey," he said softly, "you okay?" "You've been quiet today." I swallowed hard. "Just tired," I managed. He came to sit beside me, his hand warm on my thigh. "I was thinking," he began, his voice hesitant, "maybe you and I could sneak away next weekend. Just us. It's been too long." Guilt slammed into me, sharp and cold. I nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." And I meant it. Part of me craved the simplicity of what we used to have, of what we could still salvage. But deep down, I knew it was already slipping through my fingers. Later that night, when the house finally fell silent, Daniel's arm draped around my waist as he slept, I stared at the ceiling. I could still feel Ethan's hands on me, the heat of his breath, the roughness of his voice when he said my name. I slipped from the bed, moving like a ghost through the darkened house. The night air was cool against my bare skin as I stepped onto the porch. And there he was, leaning against the fence at the edge of the yard, cigarette between his fingers, a shadow in the moonlight. I should have turned back. I should have left him there, but I didn't. Barefoot, I crossed the grass, the earth cold beneath my feet. He watched me, his gaze unreadable. Neither of us spoke. I reached for him. He crushed the cigarette beneath his heel and took my face in his hands, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that was more brutal than tender. It tasted like sin, like every wrong thing I'd ever wanted. And when his hand slid beneath my nightgown, lifting it, bearing me to the night, I didn't stop him. The risk was maddening. Daniel was 100 feet away, asleep, trusting. And here I was, half naked in the dark, my body pressed against the fence, his mouth on my skin. He didn't undress me. He didn't undress himself. It was fast, frantic, desperate. I bit down on my lip to muffle the sounds he pulled from me, my fingers clutching the wood of the fence, the rough grain digging into my palms. I was burning alive, and I never wanted it to end. When it was over, we didn't speak. I pulled my nightgown back down, my body still trembling, and walked away without looking back. I crawled into bed beside Daniel, his arm instinctively curling around me. I lay there, staring into the darkness, Ethan's scent clinging to my skin, my heart breaking in a way I couldn't name. Because I knew something inside me had changed. I wasn't the same woman anymore, and there was no turning back. The next time, it was worse, or better. I wasn't sure anymore. It was a Thursday. The sky was heavy with the threat of rain, the whole town wrapped in a kind of gray hush. Daniel had driven out early that morning to meet a client in a neighboring county. He'd kissed me on the cheek, told me he loved me, and I'd smiled, pretending everything was normal. But inside, I was already burning. Ethan knew. He always seemed to know when Daniel was gone. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I'd stay home, clean the house, bake cookies with my boy, be the good wife I was supposed to be. But as soon as the truck disappeared down the road, my phone buzzed. You know where to find me. I should have deleted it. I should have thrown the damn thing in a drawer and locked it away. Instead, my fingers were already moving. 15 minutes. I left a note for my son, just a silly one about me going to check on the garden, and I was out the door. The air was thick, the kind of humidity that clung to your skin, made every touch feel like a spark. He was waiting by the old mill, leaning against his truck, a wolfish grin on his face. His shirt hung loose, unbuttoned halfway, revealing bronzed skin and a tattoo on his ribs I hadn't noticed before. Thought you might chicken out, he teased, the words low and rough. I told myself I would, I admitted. His eyes darkened, and without another word, he reached for me. We didn't even make it inside the mill. Right there in the shadow of the ancient stone wall, his mouth was on mine, his hands pushing up my summer dress. I could feel the rough stone against my back, his fingers in my hair, his knee between my thighs. It was fast again, faster than last time, but different too, more desperate, more raw. The storm broke overhead as he lifted me against the wall, rain spilling down around us, soaking my hair, my dress, making everything slick and wild. I didn't care. I didn't care that anyone could have driven by. I didn't care that Daniel's name was probably still fresh on my lips from that morning. I only cared about the way Ethan made me feel. Like I wasn't a wife, not a mother, not a neighbor, just a woman being claimed. When it was over, we were both drenched, breathless, He rested his forehead against mine, his hand cupping my face, and for a moment, the world went quiet. "I'm gonna ruin you," he whispered. And the worst part, I wanted him to. I left him there in the rain, my skin humming, my heart aching, knowing full well it wouldn't be the last time. It never is. It happened one evening when the world was painted gold by the setting sun. Daniel was supposed to be out late, a dinner meeting, one of those obligatory small-town political things. He'd kissed me goodbye, told me not to wait up, but I didn't even wait for his car to hit the main road. Ethan texted, "Back of your barn, 10 minutes." I should have hesitated. I should have said no, but my body was already betraying me. My fingers trembling as I grabbed an old denim jacket and slipped out the back door. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of hay and summer. I could see him waiting in the shadow of the barn, the last light catching the sharp line of his jaw, the way his muscles flexed as he leaned against the wood. "Couldn't stay away, could you?" he murmured, that same wicked grin tugging at his lips. And God help me, I didn't even deny it. I let him back me into the barn, the old wooden boards creaking beneath our feet. His hands were on me in an instant, pulling my hair loose, tugging down the straps of my sundress, his mouth hot against my throat. We didn't waste time. It was rough, urgent. Every movement fueled by the reckless knowledge of how dangerous this was. The hay stuck to my skin, the scent of earth and sweat thick around us. His fingers dug into my hips as I arched beneath him, teeth grazing my collarbone. I was lost. Completely. Then, the sound. The unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. My blood ran cold. Ethan froze above me, his chest rising and falling against mine. We both knew that sound, Daniel's truck. "Oh my God," I whispered, scrambling to grab my dress. "Shh," Ethan hissed, grabbing my wrist. "Stay still." The engine cut off. A car door slammed. Panic clawed at my throat. I could already see it. Daniel's face, the devastation in his eyes. Ethan shoved his shirt into my hands, pulling his jeans up just as footsteps crunched closer. "Back here," he muttered, yanking me toward a stack of hay bales near the rear of the barn. We ducked behind them, my heart hammering so loud I was sure it could be heard. Daniel's voice called out, "Babe, you out here?" My throat tightened. I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. Ethan's arm was around my waist, his other hand still tangled in my hair, both of us barely breathing. I could see Daniel through the slats, just a shadow, silhouetted by the last light of day, his familiar figure scanning the barn. "Guess not," he muttered to himself after a long, aching moment. The footsteps receded. The truck door slammed again. The engine turned over. It wasn't until the headlights disappeared down the road that I let out a shaking breath. Ethan looked at me, his face flushed, his eyes wild. "Jesus," he whispered. "That was close." I slapped his shoulder, half laughing, half sobbing. "You're gonna get me killed." He grinned, this crooked, dangerous, irresistible grin. Worth it. And then, without another word, he pushed me back down into the hay, his mouth covering mine in a kiss so fierce, so reckless, it made the world disappear all over again. It was inevitable. After those hurried, stolen moments in the barn, in the mill, in the shadows of the orchard, it was only a matter of time before Ethan crossed that final, unforgivable line. Into my house, into my bed. It happened on a night thick with summer heat, the kind of night where the air sticks to your skin, and the crickets cry out like a warning. Daniel had taken our son to his mother's for the weekend. a fishing trip, an innocent father-son getaway. He'd kissed me goodbye on the porch, told me to rest, to enjoy the quiet. I told him I would, and then I did the unthinkable. As soon as the truck's taillights disappeared, I called Ethan. "Come now." There was no teasing in his reply, no playful banter, just on my way. The house felt different with Daniel gone, too still, too silent. I stood in the bedroom, our bedroom, the soft yellow light from the bedside lamp casting long shadows against the pale walls. I could still smell Daniel's cologne on the sheets. His favorite book sat on the nightstand, a photograph of the three of us tucked inside. I should have felt sick. Instead, my skin prickled with anticipation. When Ethan arrived, he didn't knock. The door opened, and there he was, tall, broad, his hair tousled from the wind. His eyes locked on mine, and in that instant, there was no turning back. Neither of us spoke. He reached for me, one hand cupping the back of my neck, his thumb brushing over my lower lip. And then he kissed me. Slow, deep, like a man savoring something forbidden. His hand slipped beneath the thin strap of my nightgown, tracing the line of my shoulder down to the small of my back. The fabric floated to the floor in a whisper, pooling around my feet. Ethan stepped back, his gaze raking over me. The soft curve of my hips, the swell of my breasts, the paleness of my skin in the dim light. "God damn, you're beautiful," he murmured, his voice rough and low. I reached for him, pulling his shirt over his head, running my palms over the hard plane of his chest, the scars, the warmth of him, and then my bed. The same bed where Daniel made love to me 100 times before, where I once laid with my newborn son cradled against my chest. Now, it would hold something else. Ethan lowered me onto it like a man possessed, his mouth leaving trails of fire along my collarbone, the swell of my breasts, the hollow of my stomach. I was trembling, with fear, with desire. The sheets were cool against my fevered skin, his weight pressing me into the mattress. It wasn't rushed this time. It was slow, almost cruelly so. His hands roamed every inch of me, memorizing, claiming. His mouth found the softest, most secret parts of me, drawing sounds from my lips I'd never made before. And when he finally entered me, it wasn't reckless like before. It was deep, measured, as if he wanted me to feel every inch, every thrust, every stolen moment. I clung to him, my nails digging into his back, tears stinging my eyes. Not from guilt, from the terrible, beautiful ache of needing something you know you can never truly have. We moved together like that, slow, deliberate. The creak of the bed, the soft gasps of breath, the name I wasn't supposed to whisper falling from my lips. When it was over, the room was thick with the scent of sweat, of rain through the open window, of sin. Ethan lay beside me, his chest rising and falling, one arm draped across my waist. I stared up at the ceiling, at the familiar cracks in the paint, the familiar ceiling fan spinning lazily above us. And for the first time, the weight of it all settled on my chest. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. But as his hand tightened on my hip, pulling me closer, I knew I didn't want to. Not tonight. A week passed. A week of stolen glances across church pews. A week of brushing fingertips in passing, pretending it was nothing. A week of aching, empty nights in my marital bed, Daniel's familiar shape beside me, while my mind drifted to another. And then came the Sunday cookout. It was tradition in our little town. End of summer, one last gathering before harvest season swallowed everyone whole. Daniel was all smiles, manning the grill, laughing with Ethan, as if they weren't sharing the same woman. I could barely breathe. I wore a simple white sundress, the kind that clung in the heat, thin enough for the sun to paint shadows of my skin beneath it. My hair was loose, curling at my shoulders, the humidity making strands stick to my neck. Ethan's eyes followed me like a storm. He stood across the yard, a beer in hand, his jeans low on his hips, sweat dampening the collar of his t-shirt. Every time our eyes met, my stomach tightened. I felt reckless, like a girl again, high on danger and want. After dinner, while the men set up horseshoes and the kids chased fireflies, I slipped inside to fetch more lemonade. The kitchen was empty, and then, of course, he was there. I didn't hear him come in, just felt the heat of him behind me. His fingers brushed my wrist, the lightest touch, but it burned. "Stop," I whispered, though my voice trembled. He didn't. His hand slid to my lower back, pulling me back against him. I could feel every hard line of his body, every terrible, beautiful truth between us. "They're all out there," I breathed, my voice catching. "I know," he said, his lips brushing my ear. "That's what makes it so goddamn good." I should have pulled away, but I didn't. I let his hand slip beneath my dress, fingers trailing the inside of my thigh, the hem of my panties. I clutched the counter, my knees going weak. The kitchen window overlooked the yard. Daniel stood not 10 feet away, laughing with his brother. One wrong turn of his head, and he'd see. The thought made my pulse slam against my throat. And then Ethan's fingers found me, slow and sure, sending a bolt of lightning through my core. I bit my lip so hard it bled. He moved with cruel patience, circling, teasing, knowing exactly how to unravel me. "Please," I whispered, though whether it was for him to stop or never stop, I didn't know. He pressed his mouth to my neck. "I've thought about this," he murmured, "right here, in this kitchen, while he's out there." I shuddered. It was wrong. It was so wrong, and I didn't care. The danger, the heat, the ache, it was too much. I turned in his arms, fisted my hands in his shirt, and kissed him like a starving thing. The lemonade jug toppled, ice and glass shattered on the floor. Neither of us moved. I pushed his jeans down, desperate, and he lifted me onto the counter. I could hear the laughter outside, the sharp crack of a horseshoe hitting metal. And then his mouth was on mine again, his body fitting against me inside me. The world narrowing to this one impossible, perfect, forbidden moment. It was fast. It was desperate. It was the kind of thing you remember for the rest of your God-forsaken life. When it was over, we cleaned the broken glass in silence. I splashed cold water on my face, tried to smooth my hair, to wipe the taste of him from my lips. Then I stepped back out into the yard, smiling, handing Daniel a fresh beer as if nothing in the world had changed. But it had. Oh, it had. That night, after the cookout, the house smelled of charred meat and citronella. Daniel was tired, his skin sunburned from standing at the grill all afternoon. He undressed in the bathroom while I stood at the window in our bedroom, watching the last of the neighbors drive away down the dirt road. The moon was heavy and low, a crooked silver coin against the black sky. I could still feel Ethan's hands on my skin, the sharp, bruising imprint of his fingers against my hips, the dull ache between my legs, a memory I didn't want to lose. Daniel came to bed, sighing, rolling to his side without a word. I lay beside him, my heart an animal against my ribs, craving what I shouldn't. I waited until his breathing slowed, the steady rhythm of sleep. Then I slipped from beneath the covers. Barefoot in my thin nightgown, I crept down the back stairs, the old wood cool under my feet. The night was thick with crickets and the faint scent of wood smoke. Ethan was waiting, leaning against the fence behind the barn, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. He didn't speak. Neither did I. I crossed the grass, the hem of my gown catching on twigs, the ground cold against my soles. When I reached him, he crushed the cigarette beneath his boot. I should have said no. I should have gone back inside. But the pull of him, the heat, the hunger, it was too much. His hands found my waist, lifting me against him like I weighed nothing. My back pressed to the rough fence post, his mouth claiming mine. It was rougher this time. No gentleness, no teasing. Just teeth and hands, and breathless, aching need. My nightgown rode up, his jeans already unbuttoned. The world shrank to the press of his body, the burn of wood against my spine, the stars wheeling overhead. I bit his shoulder to muffle a cry. He moved inside me, a steady, savage rhythm, his mouth at my throat, tasting salt and sweat and sin. I didn't care. I'd never felt more alive. When it was over, we stood in the dark, our breaths ragged. I pressed my forehead to his chest, feeling his heart hammer against my cheek. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered. His fingers traced the curve of my jaw. "I don't give a damn." Neither did I, and that terrified me. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains, painting long, pale streaks across our bedroom wall. Daniel was already up. I heard him downstairs, the steady clink of dishes, the soft hum of the radio tuned to some old country station. I lay still for a long time. The sheet smelled of him, of soap and sweat and clean sleep, a scent I had once loved, one that now felt like a lie. My body still ached, a secret ache, hidden beneath my skin. When I finally went down, Daniel smiled at me. A soft, easy smile, like nothing in the world had shifted. "Morning, beautiful," he said, sliding a cup of coffee toward me. And for a moment, guilt slammed through me so hard, I thought I might be sick. I forced a smile. "Morning." We made small talk. The weather, the harvest, how Tommy from down the road had finally fixed his old Chevy. I nodded, laughed in the right places, but my mind was elsewhere. It was with the memory of rough hands and midnight air, of a body pressed against mine in the dark, of my heart racing, my lips swollen, my skin marked. I should have stopped then, should have walked away, but when dusk fell again, I found myself back by the barn. Ethan was already there, waiting. Neither of us spoke. It had become a silent language between us, a cruel, perfect understanding. His hand caught mine, pulling me behind the old tool shed. There, in the dirt and dust, against the splintered wood, we came together like animals. It wasn't tender, it wasn't sweet, it was need, raw and consuming. His mouth devoured mine, my hands desperate in his hair. The scent of hay and earth filled my nose. I tore at his clothes, nails raking his skin. Every sound, every gasp, felt like a dare. We could be caught. We should be caught. And somehow, that made it even better. When it was over, my knees scraped, my lips bruised, I stood on shaking legs. Ethan lit a cigarette, watching me through the smoke. His eyes were darker now, something dangerous in them. "You'll come back tomorrow," he said, not a question. I hated how badly I wanted to. I left without answering, back to my house, to my husband, to the life I was supposed to want. But that night I dreamed of Ethan's hands, his mouth, the way he made me feel like someone else, reckless, alive, burning. And in the days that followed, it didn't stop. The stolen moments turned into hours. A hand on my thigh during church. A whispered promise in the crowded grocery store. A quick, savage kiss in the back of his truck while our children played yards away. Each time it got rougher, hotter, more reckless. And I couldn't stop. I didn't want to. It didn't take long before Daniel began to notice. At first, it was small things. A glance that lingered too long. A question asked too casually. "Where were you this afternoon?" "I thought you were baking with Sarah." I'd smile. "Lieutenant, oh, I just took a walk, cleared my head." But his eyes would hold mine a beat too long. And I could feel it, the crack forming in the carefully painted world we lived in. I tried to stop. God, I tried. I'd avoid the barn. I'd leave my phone upstairs. I'd stay busy with chores, baking, folding tiny shirts for our boy. But every time I closed my eyes, he was there. Ethan, the way his mouth claimed mine, hungry and desperate. The rough scrape of stubble against my skin. His hands, so sure of what they wanted. And I'd feel that ache between my thighs, that traitorous, wicked pulse. I was losing myself. One evening, Daniel came home early. I didn't hear his truck. I didn't hear the screen door. I was in the back of Ethan's truck, hidden behind the shed. His hand was over my mouth, stifling the sounds I couldn't hold back. The world was a blur of heat and sweat, and the sharp scent of sun-baked metal. And then, a voice. "M?" "Daniel." My blood turned to ice. Ethan froze inside me. I scrambled, panic choking me. "Stay still," Ethan hissed. But I couldn't. I shoved him away, half-dressed, heart hammering. Daniel's footsteps were close now, the soft crunch of gravel. I grabbed my dress, yanked it down. "M?" he called again, a note of worry threading his voice. I ran. Around the side of the shed, hair wild, face flushed, breath ragged. "There you are," Daniel said when he saw me, his brow creased. "You okay?" I forced a laugh, tucking my hair behind my ear. I was looking for the cat. Thought I heard her out here." His gaze flicked past me, toward the truck. I prayed Ethan had the sense to stay hidden. Daniel's eyes lingered on me a moment longer, and something in them shifted. Doubt. I felt it like a knife. "Dinner's ready," he said finally, voice quiet. I nodded, following him back to the house, my stomach in knots. Ethan didn't move from that truck until long after the sun went down. And I knew, even then, this was only the beginning. I was playing with matches in a dry field, and the wind was picking up. The days grew heavier after that. Daniel didn't say much, but the silence, it was louder than any shouting could have been. He watched me now, subtle but steady. A glance when I reached for my phone. A pause when I said I was heading out for groceries. I could feel his eyes on my back when I walked away. And sometimes, when I turned, he was still staring. I told myself I could stop. I told myself I would. But every evening, like clockwork, my pulse would quicken as the sun slid down behind the hills. I'd make some excuse. Heading to Sarah's for a while. Picking up fresh eggs from Mrs. Crawley. Just need some air. And he'd nod, not believing a word. Ethan would be waiting, in the shadows, behind the barn, by the old creek. And each time it was more dangerous, more desperate. The kind of kisses that bruised, the kind of touch that left marks. One night, the sky cracked open with a storm. Lightning ripped through the clouds, and rain hammered the roof. It should have stopped me. should have driven me back to my husband, to our child asleep upstairs. But it didn't. I found Ethan waiting in the storm, soaked to the skin, hair plastered to his forehead, and without a word, he grabbed me. There, beneath the blackened sky, in the mud and rain, we crashed into each other like waves. My dress clung to my body, his hands slid over slick skin, the taste of rain in our mouths. It was madness. It was bliss. When it was over, I was trembling. Lightning flashed, illuminating the fields, and in that flicker of light, I saw something, a figure, by the fence line, still, watching. My heart stopped. "Ethan," I gasped. "Someone's there." But when we looked again, there was nothing, only the wind moving the tall grass. I told myself it was a trick of the storm, my guilt playing cruel games. But deep down, I knew. Daniel. He was out there, and I'd just poured gasoline on the fire. The next few days felt like a slow unraveling. Daniel's questions were quiet, but they never stopped. Every glance, every word, every moment he touched me, I could feel the cracks in our lives starting to split open. And Ethan, I couldn't escape him. He was a constant pull on my heart, my body, my soul. Even though I knew this was wrong, even though I could feel the poison working its way through everything I'd built. But that night, I couldn't lie anymore. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing my hair. The room was still, save for the quiet hum of the fan. And then, without warning, Daniel came in. "Em," he said, his voice low and steady. "We need to talk." I put the brush down and turned to face him. My heart was pounding in my chest. I knew this was it, the moment I had been dreading. He sat beside me, his eyes never leaving mine. And in that moment, I saw everything. The hurt, the anger, the betrayal. "Tell me the truth, Em," he whispered. "Are you in love with him?" I couldn't answer right away. I could feel the tears rising in my throat, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I nodded. "I am." Daniel's face went pale. His lips parted, but no sound came out. And for a moment, I felt like the ground had fallen out beneath me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't stop him." He stood up suddenly, his body stiff with rage, his face flushed with a mix of anger and hurt. "So all this time," he started, his voice shaking, "you've been lying to me? You've been lying to me about where you were, who you were with?" "I didn't want to hurt you," I said, my voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you." But he wasn't listening anymore. He was pacing back and forth, hands tugging at his hair in frustration. "I don't even know who you are anymore," he spat. The words hit me like a slap, cold and raw. "I never meant to become someone I didn't recognize," I said, my voice trembling. "But I am still me, Daniel. I'm still the woman you fell in love with. I lost my way." His eyes softened, but only for a moment. "Is it too late?" he asked quietly. I swallowed hard, the guilt sinking deeper into my chest. "I don't know," I said, "but I want to try, if you're willing." Daniel's face was unreadable. He stepped closer, standing in front of me, and for a long moment, there was silence. And then he reached out, cupping my face in his hands. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said, his voice raw, "but I'll try." And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully understood until now. I had been running from myself, from my desires, from the parts of me that were messy and complicated and full of contradictions. But maybe, just maybe, I could find my way back. Not to the woman I used to be, but to someone better, someone whole. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I could see a flicker of light at the end of it, and that was all I needed. Thank you all for listening to our story. Wish you a new day full of energy. Thank you.